What psychedelics are able to do is to disrupt these stereotyped patterns of behavior in the nervous system, temporarily quieting those patterns and introducing some new stimuli. I'm sticking my neck pretty far out there in doing this work. I've drawn a pretty big bullseye on my back here, personally and professionally. I would not be doing that if I didn't think that this work was powerful medicine that fills a need that is not being met with the other tools that we have available. What I do think is going to happen, regardless of what and how we learn, is I think that more people are going to become kinder to themselves and to others. And I think that more individuals are going to align with nature, align with other human beings, align with themselves, and align with a higher power. And I don't see how the outcome of those alliances could be anything but positive for sentient beings on this planet. What I understood in that moment was it wasn't just that my spirit needed my body. It was that my body needed my spirit. And so it's not just like, what does my soul want to do while it has a body to play with? It's like, what does this body want to do while it's inhabited by its soul?
Welcome to the Psychedelic Diaries. I am Ray Christian, and we have a doozy of a show for you today. Today, we'll be discussing psychedelic training, the Yogi Bear of Fork, and of course, experiences on high doses of psychedelics. Dr. Erica Zelfand, founder of Science of Psychedelics, will be here for a deep dive and a soul search. But as usual, let's start things off with a nugget and a noodle. And today's news nugget. It appears that some Vancouver citizens agree with Thomas Jefferson's belief that if a law is unjust, it is not only your right, but your duty to break it. Zoomer's dispensary has inspired a movement, and there are now multiple brick and mortar storefronts openly selling magic mushrooms in Vancouver. And as for the noodle, something I've been noodling on of late, the path with the most paths for psychedelics. When you come to a fork in the road, take it. Yogi Bear's famous quote is apropos to this industry, and it bears repeating for a couple of the different questions in psychedelics. For instance, which is the better option? Make psychedelics accessible for medical use or create a path for intentional and recreational use? The answer? Yes. Which is better? Encourage natural plant medicine or synthetic psychedelic manufacturing? Yes. Which is better? Offer sacred experiences for the spiritually inclined or harm reduction, sans cultural rituals? Yes. There's no one-size-fits-all panacea, and this burgeoning industry is still figuring itself out, like a newborn gazelle on the African plains. So maybe best to not rule anything out just yet. The big question, which path makes safe psychedelics as accessible as possible? Something to noodle on. Our next guest, founder of the Science of Psychedelics, lead educator at InnerTrek, and a microdose partner, Dr. Erica Zelfand. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for your patience as I unmute myself. Really glad to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Excited to have you. Well, let's dive right in, Erica. You have been trained in traditional and also natural medicine, and your work emphasizes this concept of the interconnected body. Huge fan of that. And it does seem like psychedelics skews to be on the psychological side, but the mind-body connection would tell us that perhaps they'll have an impact on physiological health. And I'm curious, what do you see as a path to proving that psychedelics can improve both mental and overall health?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, and what I see happening in the world of medicine is a polarization or a divide, where on the one hand, we have the conventional model, which is very focused on the physiological, things that we can measure with chemicals and nerve signals, et cetera, et cetera. And then we have this other extreme end of the spectrum, which is, for lack of a better term, I'm just going to say woo, which is a little bit more psychospiritual, energetic focused. And the attitude in both of these extreme camps seems to be that there is no room for the other side. And my approach to healing falls somewhere in the middle, which says, hey, you've got this body. This is your sacred vessel in which you get to have your human experience in. And this sacred vessel is filled with your spirit, and your mind is here taking the ride as well. So what I have seen psychedelics do in terms of helping with the physical body is that many of the physical ailments that individuals have do have a psychological or a spiritual origin. That is not to say everything. It's not true. If you fall from a high place and you break your leg, is there a psychospiritual element to that? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe the fall had a psychospiritual element, but the breaking of the leg, maybe not. But when individuals are able to get into the psychedelic space where their brains are able to bend and flex and stretch in different ways, they can sort of have these insights and realize that there are holding patterns. And those holding patterns in mentality affect our physical well-being. So, for example, I've seen psychedelics help individuals who have chronic pain conditions, right? Pain, we know, especially chronic pain, has nothing to do with how bad of an injury there is at the location in the body, right? And we see this a lot with back pain. For example, chronic back pain, people go, oh yeah, I've got this herniated disc. And it's like, well, a lot of people have herniated discs and don't have pain. And a lot of people with pain have herniated discs. A lot of people with pain don't have herniated discs. Is the herniated disc really the cause of the pain, right? And we know chronic pain is a habit. It's a habit of the nervous system. The nervous system is sending and receiving pain signals, right? And so what psychedelics are able to do is to disrupt these stereotyped patterns of behavior in the nervous system, temporarily quieting those patterns and introducing some new stimuli. And then the brain is able to go, wait a minute, why have I been doing this stupid thing? I don't need to be doing that anymore, and letting it go. And I've also seen this in individuals who have had not just pain, but actual physical abnormalities, such as, for example, scleroderma, which is a condition in which there is a contracture of the parts of the body. So one woman in particular who I'm thinking of, her scleroderma was so severe that her fingers were curled in like this. And it was very difficult for her to straighten out her fingers. You had to do like heat and massage and slowly. And even then she couldn't straighten them all the way. And it was starting to affect her neck. And it was starting to affect her organs. And through working with psychedelics, she was actually able to uncurl her fists. And it sort of begged this metaphorical question of like, what have you been having to ball up your hands into fists for in your life? And this woman in particular had a significant history of sexual abuse in childhood, right? So she had to fight. She had to contract. She had to fight her way through life. And the psychedelics work that she did helped her transmute those traumas and work with them, and find that this habit of contracting and fighting, she didn't need it anymore. And her body responded in kind with that. So we have, bottom-up approaches, we have top-down approaches, and when people ask me which one is better, my answer is very similar to what you proposed at the top of the show. Yes, we need both. We need both. And that's why I think psychedelic healing does have a place in medicine.
Oh, I really love that. And this idea of finding a happy medium with the medical community and the woo-woo in a way, I think that middle ground will be the sweet spot. And it feels like, Erica, you kind of are a walking, talking paragon of that. And so I want to just say really quickly, thank you for what you're doing. You're doing great work in the space. And when people see someone as educated and articulate and charming as you, I think it really bodes well for the industry. And speaking of which, of what you're doing for this industry, you have a psychedelic harm reduction course. You have a course for healthcare professionals. And there's a lot of debate right now in Oregon around psilocybin for medicinal versus wellness use for 2023. How do you see this Oregon case playing out?
Oregon's an interesting case. It's my home. and I think I chose my home well for the work that I do. I think the whole country is looking to Oregon, seeing how we handle this. I really hope we don't mess it up because we are going to be setting a precedent for the rest of the country. And what I think is really interesting about the way in which the law was written, the ballot measure, which is now the law, is that psilocybin is not reserved just for the healthcare industry. Uh, you do not, on the patient's end, or I shouldn't even be using the word patient, on the consumer's end, you do not have to have your doctor's approval to do psilocybin. You do not have to go to a doctor's office to receive it. And you do not have to have any qualifying medical diagnoses in order to take psilocybin. And so what that does is it increases access, because what we've seen in the psychedelic world is that people who really want to use psychedelics, if they have the connections and they have the money, they're going to go use psychedelics. Whether they're going to pay cash money to work with an underground provider where they live, or they're going to get on a plane and fly to Jamaica or fly to the Netherlands or fly to another country in which this work is legal and spend thousands of dollars getting like a nice concierge retreat where they get to take these substances. People with resources are going to access this medicine regardless of its legal status. The people who don't have resources and don't have money to throw away in that way are not. And so with the way in which this law was written, by not needing a medical diagnosis, not needing to have somebody go through that whole chain of command of this kind of referral and a psychiatrist's approval, et cetera, we've really increased the accessibility of this medicine. Now, what we've done is we've really upset some folks in the industry of psychiatry, because they're going, okay, you're going to give these individuals substances that significantly alter their brain chemistry, their mood, their memory, their emotional regulation, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't have to sign off on that. So there's been a real power struggle over this new law and what it's going to look like and how it's going to happen. And even to be a psilocybin facilitator in Oregon, you do not have to be a licensed healthcare provider. You don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a therapist. You don't even have to have graduated from college. You need a high school diploma or a GED equivalent to apply for a training program. You do have to complete a training program. Now, here's the other thing that healthcare providers don't like. Healthcare providers have to do the training program also. So there's no, well, I'm a psychiatrist, so I want to administer psilocybin. Okay, that's very nice, Dr. So-and-so. You still need to do the training program approved by the Oregon Health Authority and get a license to do this. And so the work that I'm doing with InnerTrek is we are actually creating a psilocybin facilitator training program. It's going to be about a 6-month training program in which individuals, whether they're already talented therapists or they're someone who has never done any therapeutic work before, are going to come and learn with us, alongside us, and from us on how to effectively support somebody having a psilocybin experience. And I'm really confident that we're going to train capable, confident, excellent psilocybin facilitators in this program.
Again, thank you for what you're doing. I love everything about that. So, Erica, let's take that a step further. So let's just imagine a world where everyone follows this Oregon model and psychedelic medicine is fully legal across the globe, perhaps respectful and intentional use is the norm. And then 5 to 10 years pass by. How is that world different?
Wow, I think it's a really different world. First of all, I think it's a healthier world. I would not be doing the work that I'm doing. I just need to say, and I'm not looking for any pats on the back here, but I do need to name, I'm sticking my neck pretty far out there in doing this work. I've drawn a pretty big bullseye on my back here, personally and professionally. I would not be doing that if I didn't think that this work was powerful medicine. Not just powerful medicine, but powerful medicine that fills a need that is not being met with the other tools that we have available. Now, that being said, is it a perfect medicine? I don't think so. Is it the right medicine for every person? I don't think so. Is it the right medicine for every situation, every phase of life? Likewise, no. So I do think what we're going to see is, I think our happy little bubble is going to burst once this becomes universally acceptable. We're going to see the limitations here. We're going to see what this medicine can and can't help with. We're going to see that the medicine doesn't always work in solo, that it may pair very well with therapy for certain kinds of situations. It may pair very well with religious practices in other situations. It may pair very well with conventional psychiatric treatment in other situations. We're going to learn. We're going to learn together. But what I do think is going to happen, regardless of what and how we learn, is I think that more people are going to become kinder to themselves and to others. And I think that more individuals are going to align with nature, align with other human beings, align with themselves, and align with a higher power. And I don't see how the outcome of those alliances could be anything but positive for sentient beings on this planet.
Wow.
So I'm putting my money on psilocybin.
Yeah, me too. Beautifully put. Thank you for that. And I agree. A lot of the work I do is around solo work, because that was my experience, because I didn't have access to a guide or a retreat in Costa Rica. And I talk a lot about that on our TikTok for harm reduction around solo trips, and I found a lot of people are doing that. And I tell some of these people, it's not the answer for everybody, especially early in the journey. And I think we need a very nuanced and kind of segmented approach to it. And I think, to echo what you said, it ain't easy coming out of the psychedelic closet. And, people like you and I, there are just some jobs we'll never get now because of that. And it's a cross that we're bearing. And I think it speaks to the power of this, that especially people like you that are in medicine, you're coming out anyways and talking about it. And I think it's really important and special. So thank you for that. Speaking of kind of coming out of the closet a little bit, my psilocybin sessions these past 6 years, Erica, have really changed me in subtle but profound ways. And I love how your psychedelic course is rooted in evidence-based medicine and firsthand experience. And I'm curious, what has your personal psychedelic journey been like?
Well, I'll say that my professional interest in psychedelics was very much rooted in my personal journey with psychedelics. My first psychedelic experience was in Peru. It was right after I graduated from college. And I went to Peru to sort of celebrate and get my yayas out, so to speak. Um, as a side note, I thought, okay, I'm in my 20s. I need to travel and get the travel bug out of my system before I get serious. And actually what ended up happening was I just fed that travel bug so much magic and beauty. And I now travel regularly ever since. And I don't think I'm ever going to grow up. But during that psychedelic experience, I had a very negative psychedelic experience my first time. I was working with a shaman outside of Cusco, Peru. And I just didn't have a good feeling about this guy. And I chalked it up to a general distrust I had of men and authority figures due to other negative experiences I had. I was briefly in a cult, and there was an abuse of power and things that happen in cults with older male mentors and naive younger female enrollees. So I kind of chalked up my discomfort with this shaman to my past wounding. Fast forward 15, 20 years later, I was reading an article in a psychedelic journal about a 19-year-old boy who had actually died during an ayahuasca ceremony, and the shaman hid his body and denied that he had ever been there. And I'm looking at the photo of the shaman in the article, and I'm going, I know this guy. And so I called up the friend that I went to Peru with. I was like, hey, what was the name of that shaman that we sat with in Peru when we took San Pedro? Oh, Jose Vargas. I'm like, oh, are you sitting down? I've got some news for you.
Oh my
So,
God. Oh my God.
yeah. So I'll say my first psychedelic experience, and this is not meant to dissuade anybody, but my first psychedelic experience was extremely dysphoric. I felt like I had been poisoned during the experience. And I'm not saying like metaphorically or spiritually. I physically felt like I had food poisoning or some kind of toxin in my body. I didn't trip. I saw like one fractal rainbow for about 30 seconds. And the rest of the time, I just felt super nauseous and ill. And honestly didn't really get anything out of the experience. Another thing I want to say is sometimes when I talk about psychedelics with people who are psychedelic naive, they go, oh, well, I could never do that because I mean, I can't even smoke cannabis. I hate cannabis. I feel ill. I feel horrible when I use cannabis. Cannabis is not my medicine. I get super anxious. I feel stupid. I hate that I feel stupid. Then I get mad at myself for you. Why would I make myself stupid? I love my brain. I'm a beautiful, intelligent human. Why did I just make myself dumber? I'm so nauseous. Anywhere I have pain in my body, I feel the pain more. Why is everyone looking at me like that? Yes, I've tried the strain that your neighbor makes, and I've tried all of them. Not my medicine. So I just need to name that. So there's a reason there are so many plants on this planet. Some are going to resonate with others. Okay, I'm back from the tangent now. I need you to remind me of what your question was.
Well, that's good. I appreciate that psychedelic journey. And I think that I appreciate that you didn't call that a bad trip. You said it was a negative experience. Sometimes I think there is no bad trip. You learn from some, but some of them may be unpleasant and a tougher deep cleaning. And in that case, you had just a bad guide. So let's switch gears a little bit to perhaps maybe a more positive or stronger or profound experience, if you don't mind taking a stab at the ineffable. I'll share one quick story and I'll kick it to you. Erica, I experienced ego death on a recent trip a few weeks ago, actually. And it felt like my reality was this cube and it turned once. And all of a sudden, I was the most intelligent human on the planet. It turned again. And all of a sudden, I was the most intelligent being in the universe. And then it turned about 10 more times at a point where I ended up in this infinite. And I felt this taste of this sense of wisdom and vastness. And I'm still kind of coming to grips with the beauty of the experience. And I'm curious for you, what's one mystical experience that still resonates with you?
Well, there are a few that come to mind. One that has really informed my philosophy as a doctor and as a healer in particular was on actually a pretty low dose of mushrooms. And I do want to say that it was one of the lowest doses I've ever taken. Not like a microdose, but a low dose. Because sometimes people talk about taking these big heroic doses, and bigger isn't always better.
Yes.
Yeah. And setting, right? I was in a beautiful place with some of my best friends on this planet. And our intention was to trust and let the day unfold as it needed to. And so I was laying down, kind of curled up in the fetal position, and I opened my eyes and I could see my hands in front of me, and I just kind of watched my hands as I opened and closed them a little bit. And then I realized, the way that I'd always thought about death is that death is the body fails and therefore becomes inhospitable to the spirit, and then the spirit leaves. The spirit needs the body. And I just want to say, this might not sound that profound, right? But when something penetrates to every cell in your body, the words don't have to be very profound.
Well put.
What I understood in that moment was it wasn't just that my spirit needed my body. It was that my body needed my spirit. And that it wasn't just, okay, like my body is this car and I get to drive my spirit gets to drive this car for 80, 90, 100, God willing years, But it's that this car gets to get driven, It's like this thing gets to be enlivened. This thing gets to move, it gets to stretch, it gets to dance, it gets to hug, it gets to make love, it gets to throw its head back and laugh. And that feels good for my body. And so it's not just like, what does my soul want to do while it has a body to play with? It's like, what does this body want to do while it's inhabited by a soul? And so much of the negative activities that I engage in my life, maybe they're denying my soul, or maybe they're denying my body. When does my body get to decide what it wants to do? My body wants to rest. How often do I talk myself out of resting because that's laziness, right? I didn't get enough work done today. Or no, we should really push through and plow through and knock out. No, it's like, homegirl, I get to decide some things. And I'm telling you, I want you to lay horizontally and close your eyes and not move for an hour this afternoon and take a siesta. You know, when do I get to decide? Or even how that determines attraction, right? How do you attract a mate, right? Is it your brain being like, okay, how much money did they make? Did they get along with their mother? Or it's like, or does my body want to be close to them? You know, and not favoring one over the other, but understanding that there's a dance between the two. My spirit needs my body needs my spirit. And hey, my mind gets to have an experience too. You know, my mind loves learning about how psychedelics work. My mind doesn't love doing math. You know, do I have to do math sometimes? Sure. But like, okay, mind, like what would delight you today? I want to read a book by Ann Patchett. Great. You know, and letting each of those three entities be important and letting each of those three entities call some of the shots. Not all the time, but a third of the time. Letting each of them have a turn and letting them work together.
Wow, that was exquisite. Thank you for that share, Erica. I think you are one of the philosopher queens out here in this industry. And I think that this idea, I've resonated with this idea of like, it's almost like you are the awareness, and the awareness has almost like three kids: the body, the mind, and the spirit. And you've got to give them love in different various ways. Let your body dance sometimes. Let your mind do something that um, tickles its curiosity, and let the spirit do things that feed and nourish that aspect. And it's like you've got to balance all three and respect that they're in a way, yeah, they're the same, but they are different. And I really like how you put that. And I also like your call out of this idea of like, there's no scoreboard with how many psychedelic drugs you've done in a session. One of my biggest trips ever was 2.4 grams of mushrooms. And I've tried 3.5 and 4 and 4.5, and it was almost like diminishing returns. And you don't need to do 5, 10 grams, 30 grams. I don't know if that's even really needed. It's just enough to let the fifth dimension or whatever it is say, okay, I'm here. I got the ticket to, if you want to do anything with me, here I am. And so the bigger doses may not be the thing. Erica, that was beautiful. We got to transition over to speed round soul search. Question number one, Erica, who is one person that has had a tremendous impact on your career?
My mother. Because even when she doesn't understand, she loves unconditionally and says, honey, whatever makes you happy.
Bet that would warm her heart to hear that. Question number two, Erica, what is a recent hard-earned lesson?
Actually, this one comes with some embarrassment for me to admit. Pulling people off of their psych meds to have them do psychedelics can often do more harm than good.
Wow. Great insight. Thank you for that share. Okay, question number three, and probably the toughest question. Erica, what do you think is more important, intelligence or consciousness?
What's the difference? Yes.
Nicely done. Very nicely done. I see what you did there. Okay. Question number four, final question, Erica. What piece of news from the last 10 years would tickle 2012 Erica Zelfand the most?
That the US government has, for the first time in decades, funded research on psilocybin.
Oh, beautiful.
That would really tickle 2012, Erica.
I love that answer. Okay, that was fantastic. This has been a wonderful interview. Erica, where can the viewers find you?
At my website, drzelfand.com, I would also encourage listeners to check out scienceofpsychedelics.com. That is where I have courses that I have created for everybody. I encourage everybody to check out my courses, but I especially encourage you to share them with your therapist and your doctor, because it is time that healthcare providers stopped looking dumb on this topic and know what the heck they're talking about when their clients and patients ask. So I've created a number of modules. There's CE and CME available for healthcare providers to actually understand the science of how these substances work and what they can help with. And that's scienceofpsychedelics.com. And we'll give your listeners a nice little discount too as well.
We've got a promo code. I think it's Diaries22. What does that get them? Do we know? Is some sort of discount?
20% off of either the bundle of all of the courses, or if you want to do a la carte, 1 or 2 modules, any of the above, just 20% off any of it.
Okay, Diaries22. We'll get that in the show notes. Erica, this was superb. Thank you for joining the show.
It was my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me and for your good, unusual questions. This was really, really fun.
Thank you. We do try. Okay, next week, Dr. Austin Perlmutter, the New York Times bestselling author, will be joining the show. Thank you to Dr. Erica Zelfand, and thank you for watching this episode of Psychedelic Diaries. I'm Ray Christian. See you next time. Come over, no stand up. Maybe someday.